AI and its impacts in the classroom. And I think whenever you get educators together, great things happen. And looking forward to bringing Kevin Henson and Nate Reuter up to talk a little about their journey. And very important night here because we have many great things happening, and we have a sectional championship game, I believe, at MCC. So it starts at 6. So I think we can get Mr. Reuter in and out of here, share important information, and then he can go do his parental duties. So come on forward.
So we're limited in how much we can ask Nate.
Just put it in AI when you're done. Put it in the algorithm.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, we have to turn this on.
Yeah.
Feel the push.
You have upset it.
There you go. Tony's adjusted.
Am I good, Tony?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Everyone's good? Wonderful. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us into this space and this time tonight. I know we last had some interaction with you, I think it was back in October when you were off site for a retreat day. And it was kind of a cold and rainy day, and I'm hoping that it was not going to repeat itself today. So at least the sun's out, despite what happened over the weekend, right? But we are excited to just sort of bring you through the journey since October, where we have been and where we are hopefully headed in the future with regard to artificial intelligence. So once we decided that this was really, really important work for the district, Nate and I met on a regular basis, and we decided that we really first needed to get through a cohort of people together that represented a multitude of different stakeholder groups, including elementary. So we have put together a group of folks with a wonderful a range of backgrounds, and we'll share that slide with you of who that exactly is involved in that, and came together on numerous occasions in person to talk about this whole process and what we needed to do. That included looking at other school districts and other BOCES models, for example, of what's in place. We knew that what was on the horizon eventually would be facing you as a board of having to possibly put something in place regarding policies and guidelines with that. And lo and behold, one day we received that sort of framework of this is what it could look like. And the wording of that looked like it was very, very basic, but allowed us as districts to then formulate how we wanted to do that around that particular wording. So now we are kind of at a critical juncture where we have done some work as a group, and we're excited to bring that work with you, which Nate's going to share with you in a moment, and then figure out after that the haunting question of, so now what? How do we partner with you collaboratively and moving forward to continue the work? Because once the work began and we were able to establish a basic framework that we're looking at, it opened up a lot of other doors and questions along the way. So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Nate now to sort of lead you through the process and the possibilities for the future in terms of our work. So thanks, Nate.
So we're having technical difficulties right off the bat. I don't know. Let's just see. Yeah, it works from here. Wow. Only it works from here. Great.
Thank you.
It works.
The first rule of AI is
Okay. So first off, thank you so much for being here. I don't know if your household is like the Reuter household, but tonight we have 2 meets and 1 sectional game. And I'm pretty sure at least one of our children will get stranded somewhere. Like they're gonna need a ride and we're not gonna know where they are and we're gonna try to get them home, okay? At least by bedtime. That's, I know, they're like, is this your kid? That's happened before. I also really wanna thank Kevin Henson for all of his help in this. Very early on, he and I were in a conference together, and he really identified that this is something that he was interested in. And the partnership has worked really well. Like this idea of having a director and a TOSA is such a great way to get things done. And he's just been such a great, like, I kind of pitch crazy ideas and he makes them happen. I also really want to thank Brett. Brett's been like a real huge advocate for AI, finding things for me to do. He's kind of become like my road manager. So, you know, I'm kind of like tired of like playing to the dives, and I said, I want to go to New York City. And he got me to New York City. Yeah, it's really cool. Oh, yeah, sorry, thanks. I'm not used to doing the microphone. So here's like one of my key questions is if we don't teach students AI, who will? And in many ways, this is also like my call to action. And to refine this just a little bit more, I kind of want to add to this. I want to say, do we expect AI usage to be determined at the classroom level or at the assignment level? And there's a nuance to this question. At St. John Fisher, who's been very progressive in how they're using AI, they actually decide how they use AI on the assignment level. It's not class by class, it's not person by person, but it's assignment by assignment, or by learning outcome by learning outcome. There's a big difference because all of our kids will need to have some experience with AI. And by making sure it's at the assignment level, we make sure that all kids will get this. So I don't know if you remember your top questions. You filled out that Padlet in November. So I have some of them here, and I have answers for quite a few of them, not all of them. So how we support teacher PD learning in a way that works for them, that's coming, okay? That's gonna be in here. How do we sell this as an important tool to parents? That's coming. What tools are we gonna use? We don't know yet, but that's also gonna be developed next year. One of the reasons that's not quite developed yet is because a lot of the tools in some ways just aren't quite ready. And I'll tell you a little bit more about kind of my strategy with that. How can the board support the district in providing direction and policy? I think you're already doing it. Just having us here, I know that you're already discussing like what policy is going to look like. And then we obviously work within that policy. How can we use AI in our schools to increase accessibility for students with IEPs? Next year, what I'm hoping to do is really start to develop instructional strategies that can be like implemented in the classroom. And then lastly, and I thought this one was a really good one. How are we balancing getting ahead of the curve with putting the cart before the horse? I don't know. And I feel okay saying that because that's where most districts are. We are kind of like doing this like kind of back and forth of like going ahead a step and being like, okay, maybe we're not ready to do that. And then going ahead and then we are ready for that. So it's kind of like this, you know, tug and pull between these two things. And we'll find it out as we go along. So these are the main questions I kind of want to answer and focus on just for today. What's the framework and how do we implement it? Have you seen the video? Because for like sake of time, I might just, you've all seen it. It was wonderful. And what I really liked about it was it really showed how AI could be used specifically in the classroom. And Chrissy just did a phenomenal job of that. It was kind of exciting. I got a text from someone and they're kind of like, yeah, I'm at superintendent's conference day and you're here. They were showing the video. She's like, what are you doing here? Stop that. So I'm gonna go ahead, actually, there we go. So I kind of want to ask you, this is like actually a chunk from the framework itself, and I want to ask you where you're at. Usually I'm kind of like closer to this. What's your highest level of AI usage? And you're just gonna raise your hand. So like it might kind of be going up and down, but what's your highest level? There's no like shaming here, so don't feel bad, all right? So how many of your highest level is no AI? Nice. How many of your highest level is 2? You're doing some of your planning, maybe conceptualizing, brainstorming. Maybe that's your highest level. It's okay. It's kind of like those surveys about personality. You're kind of like, is this me? I don't know. Number 3, AI-assisted editing. Many of you have probably done this because that's maybe Grammarly. Okay. How many of you are at 4, where it's like 50-50? It's almost like a co-pilot. You're like back and forth. And then anyone at level 5, full AI. This is where like AI does most of the work, and then you revise it at the end.
I don't use it for anything, but I just wanted to see what would happen.
Yeah.
If I did.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
It's kind of a fun ride, isn't it? Yeah. So why do students need AI? To be prepared for the future, enhance learning outcomes, develop critical thinking and responsible use. And if I didn't have the why do students need AI on the heading of this, this is what we're already doing. This isn't new. So, and I always try to emphasize that with a lot of teachers is don't think of AI as something new and we have to do something totally different. We're already doing so much of what we need to do in order to have AI incorporated into what we do. I recently saw this slide at a little conference I went to recently. I thought this was really interesting about where employers are at and where education is at, or at least in this case, in colleges and universities. You can see there's a gap. So 62% of employers are expecting students or employees to be using AI as part of their work. But we in education, this usually happens, like we're trying to kind of, adjust to things as they're developing. And I kind of wondered too, like maybe where we're at in Fairport, but then also just in like K-12 or even just secondary education in general, where we might be in this. But the importance of this is what employers are looking for. This is where students are heading. Like sometimes we say to ourselves, we don't know what kind of world we're sending them to. In some ways we do right here. We're giving a pretty good clue about where they're headed. So this is a quote I hear quite often: AI won't take your job. Those who know how to use it will. So why is a framework needed? AI has the potential to undermine learning, and we've already experienced that as a district. The framework shifts that from undermining learning to supporting learning and enhancing learning. It provides a flexible and consistent expectation to integrate AI, and that was something that was really important to me. A lot of times people are kind of like, what are the expectations? What's the policy? What are we doing? But then what happens is when they get those expectations, they're kind of like, that's not going to work for me. So we really tried to build something that does both. It's flexible to accommodate people's different situations and even teaching styles while still using AI, but then also having some consistency across the district. It fosters academic integrity and also human-to-human connection. And that was something that I thought was so cool that really came out in the video that had Chrissy in it, was like, teaching, the heart of teaching, she said, is always humans. It's us, it's people. And when we start to have a framework or a language around this, it's much easier to keep that and preserve our humanity. It provides a starting point to help build AI literacy within the district. So a little bit about how it was developed. Here's the committee, here's the team. JJ was one of them. Okay, there he is. What we tried to do is really kind of emphasize more of a secondary approach and definitely the humanities. But we did have elementary on there too, because that's going to be like kind of like the next step in this, is developing things for elementary. Kevin explained a little bit about some of the things we did. We did an introduction to AI. We took a lot of time trying to figure out what is it that we're actually going to make. Is it a guidance document? Is it policy? Is it rules? Is it code of conduct? That actually took a while for us to kind of like hone in on, and that was an interesting discussion. We reviewed policies from local and national districts. We met with other districts. That was really cool. Like they all came to our district. We like did kind of like a speed dating thing and chatted with them. And then we created a rough framework, synthesized it, and then they approved it. And every step of the way, I kept putting it in front of the committee and saying, is this right? Revise, revise. Is this right? Revise, revise. Is this right? And we landed on it. So the framework, I'm going kind of quickly because I know we got other things, sorry. So the framework has like maybe 3 or 4 distinct sections to it. The first part is kind of like identifying the roles, like if you will, like it's the choreography of like who does what. Teachers should, students should. One that I recently added to teachers should be upfront with students about how they're using AI, either to create instruction or to assess students. I don't know if you saw the article in the New York Times recently about a student suing a college because they're like, I paid a lot of money and this teacher who's supposed to be an expert is using AI. So, a lot of what the framework does is it creates this like, it defines the relationship of like, I'm doing this, you're doing that. And we know where each other are at. This part you've already seen. This is a key part too with citation. This is something the committee felt really strongly about, was like, how do we cite AI? And there's actually 2 fundamental components to this. One is just straight citation, like pointing to like, where did this come from? But then 2 is explaining how did you actually use the AI? And this is something that's really important with teaching with AI and in general. AI is really good at creating product. It's not as good at process. And when we shift our like teaching with using AI, we need to focus more and more on process. Hopefully this sounds familiar because we're already doing that. AI makes it even more stark and obvious that we need to be doing this, especially in how we assess. And assessing isn't just like a quiz or a test, but like how we learn what students know or how they demonstrate their learning. Consequences, things I thought was really cool about this. Sometimes I'm kind of like, yeah, let them have it. But I thought it was really cool how the committee first focused on like no, like this will hurt your learning. And what's kind of cool is students know this, but they don't always know how to talk about it. It's been interesting. I've talked to some teachers who are like, in some ways, decriminalizing AI because the students are kind of like, wait, am I allowed to use it? I feel bad if I use it. And teachers are starting to be a little bit more upfront about like, yeah, you can use it for this, but not for that. So we need to be upfront with them about when it is going to hinder their learning and when it won't. So some core principles, I'll just kind of throw these up here. It's student-centric. I really like the teacher empowerment part, probably because I was in the classroom for many years. It helps teachers to have like a foothold, a place to start, to have that conversation with students. And it emphasizes ethical and responsible use. There's transparency, flexible, and it obviously focuses on academic integrity as well. All right, so here's kind of where we're at. We developed a framework this year. We've introduced it to the administration, and then we're introducing it to staff. By the end of this week, all buildings, all staff will have seen the AI framework. They'll have been made aware of it. Next year, the list gets a lot longer. I started writing things down. I'm like, who's going to do all this? Is this me? So admin retreat, which I'm really excited about. When I pitched this to the administration team, I think in many ways it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think in some ways it was kind of almost one of the first times they had an opportunity to talk about AI as a whole team. So it was really cool. I learned a lot from that experience about like how to help guide and where things are at. We're hoping to have some early adopters for the AI framework. We're going to adapt it for elementary, write A lessons, parent meetings, learning paths relate to AI. Hoping to do a regional presentation of the framework, and then NISBA, New York City. Thank you, Brett. Okay, New York City. Thank you, board. And then this would be the following school year, full implementation of the AI framework, district adopted AI tools. That's when I'm hoping to finally have like specific tools that we've decided to use as a district rather than just like free things. There's a lot to do. I thought this was kind of interesting. This is from AI for Education. This is a really cool website or institute. I'll give these. I don't want to read all these, but I thought you might like seeing these because like you make those connections to the community. You're kind of like, wait, what questions should I be ready for to answer for parents? This is a really good list. I really like this, and I feel a responsibility to help start answering those questions and providing support for that. So summary, the framework provides a starting point, start building AI literacy. The framework will be an important foundation for like all of our AI projects. One thing I'm really excited about this is like, as I've talked to other districts, not like, I'm not saying like we're better than other districts or whatever, but I feel like we have something that works. You could start at tools, you could start instructional strategies, you could do rules. And I think it's really unique from what I can tell, our approach of doing classroom expectations. It's very classroom centered. And what it will do is that framework will help shape like everything else we do. Like if we're getting a tool, does it fit the framework and so on. And then hopefully teachers and students should be able to use AI on a large scale in the school year 26, 27. What questions do you have? That was fast. Sorry, we don't usually like to like.
I appreciate this. It's something I'm dealing with a lot at the college level and at the grad school level of the students using it, and not for always good purposes, but again, I think what I appreciate about this is they're being just thrown in the foot. They're like being dropped in this and, ooh, I can do this, rather than learning systematically like we're doing here. So I appreciate the approach, and I love if we don't teach our students to do it, who's going to? That is such a powerful question. You may not know this, but I just want to throw a question out there. As you're looking at tools, are there AI, generative AI stuff, are they Ed2D compliant?
There are tools that are Ed2D compliant. And in many ways, a lot of the tools that we've started with are tools for teachers. That's kind of part of my strategy in general, because if teachers start to get familiar with the tech part of it, then also kind of start to wrestle with the philosophical questions. So I have met with teachers who are kind of like, yeah, I've been using AI, it's great. I don't want the students to use it. And they're like, wait, and I'm using it. And so like that's when they start to ask those important questions.
So as you'll see, as we develop, or as the board develops policy, there's very specific points to Ed2D. and a process by which you just can't be doing it on your own and bring it in the next day. It needs to be vetted through a whole process, which we're gonna have to develop. So that, add that on the list.
I know, the committee.
Put that right on that to-do slide. So when you're talking about the lessons on AI, are we going to push our students into kind of the ethics of AI in terms of, first of all, the development of AI systems and a lot of questions around the whose work was used to develop it, but then also the sustainability aspect of AI.
Yeah.
And, every time you put a prompt in, you're using 1 to 3 gallons of fresh water, and, what does that look
Especially
like?
for like AI image generation.
Yeah.
That's heavy resources. Yes, and typically with ethics too, so there's an environmental impact, but then there's also just like, there's a lot of bias because like AI represents human knowledge and we're biased. And then also, maybe not as much ethics, but also just like learning how to define misinformation is a key component. But yeah, that's definitely part of it. And when you think about instruction too, there's kind of like the very, direct instruction of like how to use AI, like prompting. But then what I'm hoping too is to develop lessons that really kind of more seamlessly embeds it with like, here's a lesson that we're doing on writing for humanities somewhere, and AI is like woven into it. But they both will have to happen, kind of like that more explicit instruction. Any questions?
I was going to ask, so like, not only is there the continuum of the degree that students may be able to use AI, but is there also kind of in the other way that some AI sites might be more valid, better than others? Like we teach students like Wikipedia,
Yeah.
not a good source. Like, is
Yeah.
that also similar with AI where, okay, ChatGPT is this or Gemini is something else? Like, will teachers have the resources to say, if you want to use AI, this is the structure, these are the places you could go to, as opposed to,
Yeah, so
I don't even know if that exists.
it does. Each, like there's ChatGPT, Gemini, there's Claude, and each one of them has like slightly different advantages to them. And even within those tools, there's different ways of using them. Usually our first step would probably be like, is it EdLaw 2D compliant for that privacy? So with AI, you put stuff in there, like how far, up does it go? Does it stay just within our district AI account, or does it go up further and further? Those are like really important questions. But then teaching them how to use it. Usually a lot of digital, or I should say AI literacy, usually focuses a lot on the prompting. Prompting is like key. If you can get people to use prompting well within AI, you're like 90-95% of the way there. That's key.
And then just a quick thing, a point. I was at the Village, when we were at the Village Public Market a few weekends ago, a woman came up to me and asked me like where Fairport was in AI, and it was just really nice to also message her back today and say, oh, we're going to be talking about AI. So she was really thrilled to know that we are on the forefront of it.
It's on a lot of people's minds, and it's been kind of interesting to, even just last week I was with like a whole bunch of other districts, and everyone's really just at the beginning of figuring out. And one thing I've noticed too, it's been hard for a lot of institutions to know just where to start. Like, do we start here? Do we start there? And I'm glad that we found a place to start. I think this is a good place to start.
Great.
So,
Thanks, Nate.
Me-
And Kevin.
kind of related to Jen's question, but there's so much volatility on the industry side with AI, with the different companies and the different sites that are doing it. It's a lot's happening very quickly in that space. So I know it's built in, but I'm just curious, how do you guys balance this out as a framework so you're not like teaching them ChatGPT but teaching them like the broader lessons about generative AI?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons I'm really glad we started with a framework rather than a tool first. A lot of times too, there's skill transferability. Sometimes you get this question a lot with like word processing, like Google Docs versus Word. They're different, and there's some passionate feelings about these things. We're not going to go into that tonight. But there's skill transferability. And when you really look at the world that kids are going into, like they're changing jobs and employment much more quickly than previous decades. So that transferability ends up being really important. What I like about the framework again is it's kind of like agnostic in the sense that like it's not tied to anything specific. We as a district, are already like looking at Gemini just because we're a Google Workspace district, and Gemini fits into that world really well. But I'm strategically, I'm glad we didn't adopt the tool first, exactly for what you're saying, because I don't know if the industry is quite ready yet. There's still a lot of movement and people trying to figure out, they're kind of like, we built this thing, is that what you want? And people are kind of like, I'm not sure that's what I want. Like there's so much uncertainty.
Yeah, it was a related question. Do we expect sort of this arms race to be similar with the Ed2D compliant school focused tools versus the broader array of different tools available? Because it's astonishing. Like I use some for work, I use some personally, and I can't even just ChatGPT, like how different it is compared to 6 months ago is incredible. So I'm just wondering, we're rolling this out maybe 26, 27. Do we even know what those tools are going to look like? Or do we expect the school-based ones to hopefully be like a little bit more reined in than just trying to advance so quickly and change so quickly?
Usually when you think about student tools, obviously there's that like initial level of like privacy is key for EdLaw 2D. Like where is the information going? And there's discussion about different tools being made available that are right now like 18 and older. But the other big A2 for like good tools for like a classroom are some like key classroom management tools. So like if a student uses Gemini, for me as a teacher, I can't see anything that they're doing. There's two levels to that. One is just to make sure they're safe. But then two, for me as a teacher, I want to know how they're learning. So a tool like School AI, you can have like a classroom management portal in a sense, where you can see specifically what the students are doing. I did School AI with you guys briefly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that. Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to remember if that was the one.
And I could kind of see where you were.
The log, yeah.
And there's other tools like that. And what I really like about that, so I was in a classroom where someone was using like AI with their students, and it was cool because I could like say, how are you using the chat bot on the side, and I could see like it suddenly opened up their mind. Like I could see how they were thinking about the assignment they were working on. It was really cool. It really gave me a lot of feedback about how the kids were thinking about what they were doing.
I can say though with certainty that it can't be a Wild West, and it needs to have the framework. And I envision educators collaborating in developing menus and sandboxes and things that can be tried out in the classroom and be used. But again, we have to add 2D law components, the framework. I think there needs to be fidelity too that's going to be tied to the policy. So what happens outside of school is a different conversation.
Yeah. Nate, I just have one quick question.
Oh yeah.
I know in my field, we've been talking a lot about using AI to support people with disabilities. Do you know if BOCES is looking into different things? I know there's been, I was curious. Okay.
I don't know. I haven't touched that part as much.
There's some states that have like tech task forces that are focused on it. So I get to hear presentations and different things that people are doing using AI, especially like in the neurodiverse arena. So that's been really interesting just in terms of having the assistance of, I want to write a thank you note to so-and-so, or I need ideas on how to approach, in job interviews.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff is neat. I just wondered if BOCES had started doing anything.
If I could just jump in real quick, they are, and yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So that'll be through the RIC. Yes, I have, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, we are doing that work in the BOCES arena. So the ASI table talks about a lot of this work too. What I'm really proud of with this team is that they're making it fair-partized and really, really personal. And so as we continue to grow and do that work, we'll partner with BOCES on some of that assisted tech. It's the regional, I don't know what it stands for. I'm sorry.
Regional Information Center.
Information Center, yes. Sorry, I should have known that. I know the people, not the initials.
And the other big piece that you're bringing up through all of this is not only the tools themselves, but the ethics and the moral compass behind it. So we realize another huge piece of this is what are the entry points that we need to start thinking about to bring this to students that's developmentally appropriate, and to teach them things like not only using the tool, but like, for example, teaching them like, when you see this, does that sound like you? Is that your voicing? I mean, how would you do that differently to make it more sound like you? So there's all of those pieces that we know that we need to work into there, not only for our students, not only our staff, but also our caregivers too. So there's all of these other avenues that we have to think about once we start rolling this out and figuring out how, for the bigger community too, we dispel the rumors of that it's not evil, that there is good to it. And it goes back again to what Chrissy said in that video. Again, people might say, well, this is taking away all the teacher's job, like they're going to have all this time on their hands now. Well, it's not. If you look at the video, you see what she did was she was able to put in a prompt for kids to give immediate feedback on a writing sample that was not the end piece yet, that allowed her then to maybe save a little correcting time at that point and be able to get around to students quicker and for them to get immediate feedback. But it didn't take away her still interacting with the text at the end and looking at it and still assessing it and giving her own human feedback. So there's those rails in there that are so important that we need to make sure that everybody's understanding as well, and kind of dispelling any of those rumors of what it's doing and taking away, instead of how it's adding and enhancing.
I do have a feeling that there'll be more conversations. I think the board's interested in seeing how it develops, just by the feeling that I got here. And it's exciting work, and I'm looking forward to seeing your work in October when you go to the school boards.
Yeah, very great.
Good luck with all the sectionals and all the.
I
Picking up my
know.
tapes.
Find all those kids at the end of the night.
With the rooters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a bumper.
Thank you.
So I think we'll transition now to the MTSS part. I think Tony's in the back and he'll be queuing up the second presentation. And I'm just doing this intentionally so Tony can do it. Yeah, and we have Tanya coming up and Lisa Benson, and I see Mark and JJ and Scott out there. I think they'll be joining as well.
Hi, everyone. I brought a crew today, so come on up
I know.
here-ish. It'll make it easier for transition. Yeah. Yeah, I brought all the audience tonight. Yeah. Thank you. While we get that presentation up, I just want to take a minute and just thank you so much for having us and entrusting us with what I think is, I might be partial, but what I think is the most important work in the district, and that's improving schools and improving opportunity for access and learning for our students. And we have in front of us today.
So Tony, go to B, please, in the agenda. B, workshop topics, B.
Nope, down a little bit, Tom. There you go.
Then you see the live link there?
Live link.
Bingo.
Can I have the,
Here's the,
thank you.
we'll put it in presentation mode.
Right, so we adjusted our presentation a little bit tonight so that our fine teachers can continue their evenings. I know there's some soccer games and sectional games and I don't know, life, right? So that's a good thing. So we reordered a little bit, but let me just start with grounding us. I know you cannot read this, but this has been shared with the board. It's our 5-year plan, our MTSS plan. And tonight we're gonna touch on all of these topics, but we're gonna start with the last 3, and that's our school improvement team's work. And so just a reminder of who our school improvement team is. We have lead teachers, TOSAs, and administrators. It's about 100 people that are part of that group. And how do you organize 100 people? Not by yourself. And you use your directors and your leads to help you figure out where that work needs to happen. And we actually asked our people, our administrators and teachers, to choose which of the 3 buckets they wanted to join. And so we had 3 buckets: grading for learning, standards, and the role of homework. And that's what we are going to present on tonight. And there was some time that was full group, some time that was subgroup work, and we have one more time to come together virtually this year. So just to ground us really quickly, and then I'm going to hand it over to Kevin. Did Kevin leave? Oh, no, there you are, Kevin. Sorry. Gosh, you're not a wallflower. I don't know how I missed you. I'm going to hand it over to Kevin and JJ. So we actually started this work for Grading for Learning last April, where we brought in Joe Feldman from the Crescendo Group to do presentations with our entire faculty. So there was an elementary version and a secondary version, just to kind of ground us in thinking about why we grade the way we grade and what could be possibilities. And then this year through the PL Path, we did a brief dive, just building that foundation so that when we continue this work, it's got some places to stick. You want those sticky points in your brain. So that's what our goal was this year in the PL Path. So we did a history. We read an article called Can We Trust the Transcript? And we just learned about some practices and maybe what we could do about them. So there's grade inflation and deflation. And then I'm going to hand it over to JJ and Kevin, who were part of this cohort number 1. So come on up, guys. Sorry, that was loud. And so this really was an action research cohort. And Kevin, if you want to go into some of the data for me, that would be great.
Absolutely. So we partnered with Crescendo Group, and we had a facilitator, Courtney, who, come on up, sir. No one's putting JJ in the corner. Okay, you're part of this. So we had a series of events that occurred. If you look closely, you'll see the representation of the 19 people that were part of that cohort were from varied backgrounds. And where you see other, that would have been some of our TOSAs, for example, who decided to get on board as well. We also had some of our administrators from the buildings. They would float in once in a while to listen to the message as well. And so we started out in September with a 2-day kickoff when Courtney was here, and she led everybody through some really valid history of grading, why grading started as it did, and actually had us digging down deep inside of ourselves of identifying a time when it was either in our favor, when something stuck with us in terms of a grading situation, or something that was a negative. And we shared our stories and talked about that. And once we did that, she then grounded everybody and said, okay, now's some time to identify a project, something that you want to tackle moving forward. And you will see that I'm going to move forward actually just a little bit here. I know that that screen is hard to read, but that shows the spectrum of projects that people did. And then remember at the second day, that conclusion, I don't know if JJ was included in that, she said, okay, you now have to pick something, you're going to do it. We're not going to leave you out there to hang. We're also going to give you some coaching to do that. So we're going to have a coach work with you on some different cycles throughout the way. But we want you to dig into those weeds and get muddy a little bit. And so people tried various things, from giving no homework zeros. Some people tackled doing redos and retakes. Some people decided not to count group work, for example, and or participation in a grade. All right, and there's a gamut of things up here that you'll see on that slide that people dove into. And some people started the work and they felt like they were falling flat on their face on it, and we regrouped them and said, it's okay. It's not failure, it's a pause, it's falling forward. Let's go back and try something different. So you'll see up there might have been a couple projects where people tried something out and then they backed off and decided, this is not for me, I want to do something different with that work. And so we had the opportunity for people to try it, to have that coaching cycle, and then to come back again to meet and to share out on those kinds of things. And in addition to sharing that, people also dug into a little bit deeper into the whole idea of feedback and rubrics and what that looks like for folks, all right? And so just to give you a little bit of an idea in terms of the people's sort of response to that, we had on a rating scale, 3.8 was kind of the average, okay, of the performance of what the participants rated this experience, and a 3.9 on their coaching sort of performances along the way. All right. That said, we want to validate and bring forward that work and keep it going. We had our last session last week, which was a virtual one, where there was a lot of feedback given from folks, and people had an opportunity to sort of work in small groups on that as well, and to be very honest about their struggles. And I'll say it even before I turn it over to JJ, some people said, I love this work, I love doing it, but what about after? What about after? What happens then? My doubts are, how do colleges and universities look at this if we're going to change our practices? And if we don't give number grades, for example, anymore, we go a different scale. How does that translate? How do people work with that? How do we partnership with those? How do we get that out to families who, when you and I grew up under completely different sort of a matrix of the rating scales that we got used to, how do we break out of that as a culture and do that? So those are some real valid things that we need to look at and we need to address moving forward. However, it seems like that there will be survey that's going to go out soon that I'm going to put out there to see for year 2 who might want out of this cohort of 19 to continue the work, and what would that look like in terms of support that they would need. It might not be the exact same model we did this year, but it might be a little bit different, all right? As well as delving into potentially starting another cohort of this work too for people that might be interested in starting from the ground working as well. But I thought no better of all the people, there were, I mean, everybody did a phenomenal job and has really shown some really big sort of growth in the work that they're doing. But I brought JJ here this evening because he is one of those people who is going to be candid and honest with you, but I think he's going to share with you his journey. And it's just, it's wonderful to talk to him from start to finish and what he's experienced in that. So JJ, our illustrious, one of our math educators, lead over at Minerva DeLand, I want him to share with you firsthand his experience that he went through this year in this particular process.
All right, thank you. Full disclosure, I remember that meeting when Joe came to the auditorium, and we all were there, and he kind of talked about what the thought was and the grading for equity thing, and I was definitely one of the people who was like, yeah, I don't know about that. Like, it's not, maybe that's not really for me. Like, I didn't really drink the Kool-Aid yet. Like, I'm not quite sure that I'm on board with this. And then when it got to the point where I was invited to do the sit team this year, I was like, you know, if I'm going to be here, we're gonna make the most of it. Like, I'm not gonna waste my time. I'm not gonna waste anybody else's time. Like, let's give it a shot and see what happens. I was actually really impressed with our first 2 meetings we had early on in September. I thought they went really well. I thought Courtney did a phenomenal job just speaking and kind of getting us on board and kind of explaining kind of the job ahead of it. And one of the most important questions, I think, with the whole equity thing was, what is that grade that you give to a child? What does that tell future teachers? What does that tell employers? What does it tell colleges? Like, and can we do better than a number? Or can we make that number mean more? Like, that's really kind of in the back of my brain, kind of where I was all year long, trying to do this work. I will say thank you to the district as far as what made it a lot easier to do this was kind of having the training wheels removed. And like Kevin said, you might fall flat on your face and you might fail. And it might blow up and it might be terrible. Or it might work out really well. Like, and you just don't know. And having the freedom to kind of do whatever I wanted, kind of try new things and have the ability to have it go poorly or go very well. I think that's what really helped me kind of move it along. So I have actually I have the AI thing going on here, but with the SIT team, I also had 2 active research things going on right now. One for the first semester, which I've continued in the second, and then a new one that I started kind of in the beginning, but like really focused on it towards the second semester. One was the idea of how to look at homework, like how to grade homework. And I know that's a whole cohort that they have, like how that's going to like fill in down the road. But my thought was, for math, usually, generally speaking, we kind of like, hey, did you do the homework? Let me see both sides. Just show me you did it. It's fine if it's wrong. Let's just make sure we're trying, that kind of stuff. We're going to go over it. And what I found was that a lot of kids, like, you know, they get 100 homework average because, you know, whatever they're doing it, or they're having some help doing it, or, you know, like somebody near them that's good at it is doing it and they also see it. So we had kids that were, you know, they were getting hundreds on their homework and then they were getting 70s on a test. And it's like, well, what's the problem? Like, you know, it's like a lot of times it's obvious. It's like, hey, let's make sure that we're trying. I'd rather see you try and struggle and just stop. Like, you know what, I worked for 20 minutes and I was stuck. Great. You'll learn from that. I'd rather see that all the time. So what I decided this year was, the kids thought it was going to be great. I said, I'm not going to check your homework every day. I'm still going to give it, but I'm not going to check it. And they're like, yes, this is great. I said, instead, we're going to do a homework quiz every week. And I'm going to take questions directly, word for word from the homework. And I'm going to give them to you as a quiz. So think about this for a second, right? I'm giving you the homework. You're doing the homework. Then every day, we'll come in the first 5-10 minutes, we go over the homework. You get to ask your questions, you know, if something didn't make sense last night where you're working on it. And then I'll give the quiz once a week. We start off with once a week. And so when you really see this on a quiz, this is the 3rd time you've seen this problem. It's the same problem. The numbers are the same. You probably memorized the answer if you did it the way you're supposed to the first couple times. And what I really was hoping for with this is, one, a more accurate reflection of what the kids are learning from their homework. which is eye-opening. When it did exactly what I wanted to, but it was also giving the kids the option to start learning how to be a student. And a lot of the kids appreciated that. I did a survey after the first quarter and after the second quarter, and the qualitative data was amazing. They did a really good job. They filled up 3 pieces of paper that I brought into the meeting in January. And one of the things they really liked was they said, hey, I appreciate the fact that I'm really good at math. And you know what? Doing 20 problems of the exact same thing, like after a while, like by the time I get to the 3rd problem, I got it. Like now I'm just doing it because I got to get it done. For those kids, I'm saying to them, hey, if you really mastered it that well, go do your English homework, right? Go do your science homework. Like, what do you need help with? What do you need to spend more time on? And those kids really enjoyed not having to just do work to kind of be busy. And they're like, hey, I got it. And they proved it. Like, maybe they didn't see that problem on their homework that I put on the quiz, but they know what they're doing, so it didn't matter anyway. They're still getting their 100 on the quiz. And I saw a much more accurate reflection when I can now look at parents and say, hey, you know, Timmy's getting a 70 on his homework quizzes, and he's also getting a 70 on his tests. You know, there's the correlation. And I can say, well, if we can get that homework grade a little higher, the quiz grade will follow. And it was a much easier conversation. The kids enjoyed the freedom, and it was great feedback for me. What helped me the most throughout the whole course was getting the feedback from the kids. We adjusted a lot to the point now where we're doing homework quizzes the day before a review. So we're doing a unit. Before we take a test, we have a review day. The day before that is a quiz day. And so it's a homework quiz, so they're getting graded on their homework, but then I get it back to them the next day on review day. So now I'm handing them a corrected quiz, tells them exactly what they got right, what they got wrong, and oh, hey, it's review day. So today, now I know exactly what I need to study for the test tomorrow, because this is what I struggled on in the homework quiz. And that was from them. Like we kind of felt our way through it, giving and taking, and kind of figure out what's the best route for us, and they made that decision on their own. And so I said, hey, if that's what's going to work for you, let's do it. The second half of the year, I'm still doing the quizzes, by the way. Second half of the year, I went with more of like a learning recovery model, and that kind of came about because we got a new, not would say new program for us. Delta Math has been around in the district for a while, but it's more widely used now at the high school, which it was not before. What's really nice about that, if I assign a question on Delta Math, there is a video that goes along with it, almost like consider like a Khan Academy kind of video that will teach you how to do the problem. There's also options to have like a sample problem, like somebody can see the work that's already been done to a problem very similar to that. So kids can kind of like use as much or as little as they need to finish the problem. If they're struggling with it, like the video, like they don't have to go search in their notes. The notes are there, they're online as well, right in the next tab over. But if they really need a kind of a second thing, or if they were absent or whatever the case may be, they have somebody else that can teach it to them immediately, specifically for that skill. So that was kind of nice to do with like review stuff. So what I've been doing now is that I picked some random arbitrary numbers. If a kid failed a test below a 60, I required them to take this learning recovery, so to speak, and it was all of the skills that were on that test. So sometimes it was 10 questions, 9 questions, 12 questions, whatever it was, to make sure that I accurately covered all the things that were on the quiz. And so when they took this, whatever their grade was, they would replace that grade with a 60. Why I chose 60, I don't know. It was just kind of a guess. That's fluid. You know, it was one of those, well, can you give a kid a 65 if it keeps failing? You know, should they have to do some of the stuff on their own and eventually pass the test? All that, it's up for argument. I was just more along the lines of, they said, well, I don't really want to do it. It's like, no, it's not a choice. Well, I got a 59. Great. You clearly need this, right? This is something you should do. And so they had to do that as fast as possible. So if we took a quiz on a Friday, I really wanted them to do it on Monday or Tuesday. Where that really shone through and was a huge positive impact for our class was when we get to quadratics. If you remember it, great. If you don't worry about it. The first unit was factoring. And so a lot of kids, it's one of the more difficult things we cover in the entire year. And it happens in like late January, like getting into the second semester, right? Early February. And I tell them, I'm like, you really, really got to study this, because the very next unit we start solving quadratics. And guess what step 1 is? Factoring. So if you can't factor in this unit, not only do you do poorly in this unit, you're already behind the 8 ball for the next unit. You're probably going to do poorly again. So currently our learning recovery model that we have, which I teach as well at Minerva DeLand, like we're getting that learning back to them, but we're getting it to them like 7 weeks later. And so it's like, well, that's not going to be helpful for the very next unit. So I was like, Monday or Tuesday, hey, get right to it. You guys got to do this little thing that I put together in Delta Math. You have to do it with a teacher. So if you really are struggling, if we have a math assistance center, there's a math teacher there. So if you really need to, you can say, hey, look, I've tried this 3 times and I can't get it. And they will teach you. And that's the whole goal. The goal is to learn. It's not about anything else. So the kids would do that. We would immediately replace their grade with a 60. But now that kid can understand what we're doing this unit, right? They're not behind anymore, right? They have a good understanding. If they don't have a good understanding, we just open up some more problems for them to do on Delta Math, and they can continue to get until they get it, right? Eventually, you will. It's just a lot amount of practice that you're putting forward. That has been great. I've had good positive feedback with that. Haven't had a lot of kids that needed to do it. Some repeat offenders, which it happens. But we're catching the kids that need it the most. And they've had very positive feedback. I had a kid the other day that said, I kind of like the fact that I can just keep trying until I get it. Like sometimes it just doesn't make sense. And usually we just move on and I'm like, I lost and I hate math. And that's kind of the reason that most people don't like math, is because it moves and if you're on the train, great. And if you fall off, see you later. But we need those steps to learn the next step, and it just scaffolds, and that's why kids don't like it. Because if they miss one thing, they fall behind. So I think this helps kind of get them back on board as fast as possible. You got to spend one of your lunch periods doing it. And if you really don't like it that much, study a little more and do a little more practice before the test, and you won't have to worry about it. So it's kind of like a give and take. I looked at it more of a learning recovery piece. My coach kind of looked at me and she said, hey, it kind of sounds a little bit more like motivation as well. And I was like, that's a great point. So when I filed it, my action research plan actually used like a motivational piece as for the reason that I was doing it, because it does make sense, because kids they're intrinsically motivated to be like, hey, I don't want to do this every single time I take a test. I don't want to give up my lunch period every single time I take a test. Like, if I put a little bit more effort in during the week, right, in the unit, I'll probably be fine. And that's what they're kind of learning throughout all that. So I want to say thank you. I've seen the benefits for it. I've seen where this can go. I'm excited to continue. I plan on doing this again next year, both of these pieces. And then I don't know where we're headed with it. If I will be doing a third trial, I have no idea what I'm going to try. So, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, JJ.
Thank you so much, JJ. I think the power, and I don't know if you have any quick questions for JJ, just I'm watching the time. I think the power is teacher choice in the action research. Had I said to JJ, you're not grading homework anymore, it would have been a knockdown. Not really. But he wouldn't have been happy about it. But being coached and having that support throughout the process is really powerful. But then also, you could hear the empowerment for kids. And sometimes you think, well, kids need to earn that failing grade, it's motivating. But for most kids, it's not. And so being able to do that action research has helped JJ and some of the other cohort members to do that. So our game plan with the grading for learning piece is that we will do a cohort 2 for anybody from cohort 1 that wants to continue their learning and try another practice. Bring on another cohort. We're going to do that for 3 years so that we can have a groundswell of people, so that we can then look at some maybe system-wide grading practices that can impact not only the validity of our grades, but also the engagement and motivation of our kids. So, all right. Next up, we have Scott. So Scott worked with Jackie Souter, was leading the standards group. Jackie couldn't be here. Does anybody have questions for JJ before he runs away and coaches soccer? Thanks, JJ. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, JJ.
So Scott worked with Jackie Souter on standards, and we have one lovely slide and a lot of things that Scott's going to share with us, so we're excited for that. Thank you.
Thank you. So when Jackie asked me to come and speak to you, I have to admit I was very excited, because I haven't really had the opportunity to see all of you together at once. And the visits that you do when you come to the school, they're so exciting, and the kids are so excited, and it's so nice to see your faces. And I wanted to thank all of you for the incredible work that you do. This is my 35th year teaching. 27 of them have been here in Fairport. And there's not one day as a 35-year teacher that I don't wake up and feel very fortunate to be in Fairport, because of the incredible work that you all do to kind of set the framework to allow us to do the things that we do. And this work that we did in standards was incredible. You would think after 35 years that I might be a little bit tired of attending these things. And we always say, oh yeah, I've done this before. And I might have files of things that we did before. But the reality is standards are incredibly important because they drive our instruction. And then our instruction drives our assessment. And then that instruction and the work that the kids do needs to be graded. It is so, as I'm watching and hearing everything that we're talking about, the plan for school improvement that is in place is absolutely fantastic. It's energizing to me to participate in something like this. And I left fired up, and I told Jackie and Lisa, this was incredible. And while I was doing it, I was even over here trying AI as a teacher, taking the standards, unpacking the standards. So what we really did was, as a team, we really worked hard to develop a protocol under the leadership of Jackie and Lisa. And who was the woman from BOCES that joined us that did a lot of leading?
It was Sarah.
Sarah.
And Allison. Yep.
Sarah. I might even get to paint Sarah's house. You know, school teachers paint some, right? So Sarah was awesome, and she really, at the end of the whole process, I started really exploring. We had a little bit of time with unpacking the standards and then developing some curriculum using AI, and it was fascinating how, knowing what I know, teaching for so long in the material that we use, and then seeing what AI was able to kind of produce was pretty incredible. So what we did was, if you look at the 6th grade curriculum, or the 6th grade standards, it's overwhelming as a teacher to figure out what standards in reading, writing, listening, and speaking are the most important. So that was one of our conversations. We're really going to look for those power standards. And those power standards, and my eyeballs aren't great, we want those standards to be real. So we have a lot of work to do still in order to figure out what standards are we actually going to, and if you can think of almost like an umbrella, you have these power standards here, and then other standards would connect and fall under those. But we would unpack and really focus on those power standards to drive our instruction. And then that instruction drives the assessment, and then down the road, we have a lot of work to do with assessment because that probably will turn into common assessments so that we can level the playing field for our kids in this area. So what we did is we came up with this protocol that we have to roll out and train our teachers to use in order to take a standard which you think, oh yeah, I teach standards. Well, when you break that thing down, there are so many things that we need to be doing with our kids in order to have them ready and ready for college and ready for the workforce. That's the bottom line, right, for the standards. In a simple, a simple thought is we have these kids, and what do they need to know to be college and ready, college and work ready down the road? These standards really help us to do that. So the protocol is really going to be used with what we call a real standard. So we're looking at the standards to see if the standard will provide students with the knowledge and skills for them to be successful at the next grade level. Is it enduring? So are these so valuable that they'll have this information beyond a single test so that the material is absorbed and used later on? Are these standards accessible? Are we going to assess these standards? There's a whole nother subgroup.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
We'll get there.
And then the leverage piece is, does the standard include the knowledge and skills that are valuable in multiple disciplines. So we're really looking for those power standards. Then the protocol, you can see, I don't have to go through that. We really haven't even used this yet. It's a draft. So we have some work to do with this, but the protocol gives all teachers the same exact strategies for unpacking our standards. And then once they're unpacked, we can use those standards to drive our instruction. Then our instruction transfers into our assessments. And then we grade. And then we determine whether or not these students are successful. And then we start the process over again if they're not. So it was a very exciting opportunity. It was super refreshing. I always have, what are our students, what do they need to know and be able to do for the future, right? And I loved jumping into the standards arena because I think it's super important to drive the work that we do. And you allowed us to do it. You supported it. And that's incredible because it's going to help a lot of kids. And I'm asking for some extra credit.
Yeah, you got it. I'll
inflate So- your
I don't know, that was one of the grading for equity
I'm gonna
things.
inflate your grade right now,
I
Scott.
need my grade inflated because Mrs. Christensen,
I know, I saw
yeah,
that.
Mrs. Christensen knows this. I rode 3 hours today with 106 sixth graders to Letchworth on a bus.
Nice out. At least
It was a beautiful day, and it was a great trip. And again, another thank you.
Request in time?
I always get my field trip.
So I would say that this group, and they're all spectacular and they're incredibly important. I would say this one would be directly related to student achievement in ways that we'll all be able to tell, and it speaks to the guaranteed and viable curriculum. And no matter what school you're at, no matter what teacher you have, these are the standards that we're addressing. And I think that speaks. When you have teachers talking about teaching, learning will occur.
Can I ask a very quick clarifying question?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I should know this and I don't. When you say standards, like we're unpacking standards, are these the state standards?
Yes, New York State standards in all our grades.
Scott, I was
All
gonna,
our,
Or college board if they're.
Yeah, okay.
right.
I was gonna ask you, does this feel different in terms of what you might have done in the past, looking at standards?
It's more intentional.
Okay,
It's more intentional. It's more explicit, which is going to tighten things up and level the playing field and give kids equity and access to learning that perhaps they haven't had if there's not a protocol in place. Because this will be something that we do across the board, which is fantastic for kids. Any other questions? Rosemary's going to be tired tonight.
Yeah, she just finished piano, which is on her way to soccer. So, but I didn't say, but she had a great time on the field trip. Always with you.
Very good. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you so much, Scott. Okay, now go home and go to get an early bedtime. That's a lot of time with sixth graders. Oh, geez. Always doing a hustle. I heard you want to do this work in retirement too. I heard a rumor. You were like, yes, standards.
Retirement, Mr. Parker,
If
I
you
don't
can
know.
get a 35-year-old teacher excited about standards, then something right was happening there. All right, our last subgroup was homework. And so I'd like to invite Lisa Benson and Mark Traywitz up to talk about the homework subcommittee and the work they did.
Another 35-year-old teacher.
Pretty close, pretty close. I'm a nerd, so I just want you to tell I have my notes, but I will keep it brief. Homework is such a fascinating topic because everyone has got an opinion. And our subcommittee consisted of 38 individuals. Pardon me? With opinions, strong opinions. And this consisted of both elementary and secondary teachers, TOSAs and administrators and directors. Under the guidance of Lisa, our first step was information gathering, and we were provided with a variety of articles, data, statistics done by different organizations, published in educational journals, expert opinions from throughout the world. And of course, everyone's opinion was different. So we broke up into 6 groups and reviewed 37 existing homework policies from Monroe County, New York State, and across the United States. And we jotted down common attributes that we noticed from these different policies. Some of them being alignment with curriculum, mission, mission statement, the vision of the district, and purpose for students, promoting personal and academic growth, supporting a healthy balance between academic and personal life, which is a big topic of discussion amongst all of us, emphasizing access for all students, supporting parents as partners, the role of student feedback, and making it easily understandable to all stakeholders. We identified best practices based on the research, as I mentioned, and we refamiliarized, not familiarized, but refamiliarized ourselves with the district's strategic plan, the mission statement,
That was good.
and vision statements, as well as grading True North. And finally, we developed student, parent, and teacher surveys to give to all stakeholders. Next, we analyzed the results of the surveys once they were given, and we noticed some significant takeaways from those respondents. The student respondents, 3/4 of our respondents feel homework is manageable and useful, which was kind of shocking to learn. And we didn't mess with the results. A majority of the student respondents said outside commitments make homework completion sometimes difficult, which didn't shock me at all because I know students are constantly telling me all the things that they have to do. Parent respondents, a majority of parents felt homeworks help students prepare for quizzes and tests, but 3/4 of the parents feel like their child is stressed or overwhelmed by homework, but they don't see outside activities as getting in the way of completing homework. So there's some discrepancies there in the data, and that's things we need to dive deeper into in this upcoming year. Teacher respondents, a very high percentage of teachers, 94%, believe that homework reinforces content and learning goals. 94% of secondary teachers, because I am a secondary teacher, expect students to spend 30 minutes or less on homework. One of the things I know from my own perspective is 30 minutes doesn't sound too bad, but then you start thinking about every subject at the secondary level, and that adds up very quickly. So I know for myself, through this process, I've tried to be more mindful of how much assignments take, how much I am assigning, and also how intentional I am with the work that I'm giving and making sure it's not busy work, but actually work that is supporting the learning. We did feel it was important to get the elementary perspective as well. Kathy, I can never say her last name correct, Runzinski, who's an elementary teacher.
Also a veteran teacher.
Also a veteran teacher.
Got all our vets here.
Yes, that's right.
Who's supposed to come but couldn't.
Right.
Yes,
Yes.
because she is at a student soccer game.
That's right.
And she just wanted to share these are her words. I volunteered for the SIT homework committee as a way to stay involved at a district level. Since leaving my 15-year role as an FVA building rep, I've also been interested in the topic as our society changes and recently participated in a book group studying building, thinking, classrooms, and mathematics, not just about teaching math, by Peter Lijdal with the Master Teacher Program. The meetings were very well organized and used our time wisely. I always feel re-energized of the opportunity to interact with my colleagues from other buildings. And this committee also allowed me to hear from K through 12 perspectives related to homework. It was beneficial to be able to review how other districts structured their homework policies, and the surveys of parents, students, and teachers were also valuable. For the primary grades, not much has changed surrounding the homework perspective. Personally, as some past and current board members may remember, Kathy used to give weekly homework packets with math sheets and reading logs. However, after a few years, she realized that she was really just giving the parents homework, so she stopped the logs and simply encouraged reading. Through her work on this committee, she's thinking of that families would appreciate some help with what to practice in addition to nightly reading, but still have the freedom to structure their time as needed. So she's considering some kind of optional monthly bingo board. The secondary population has a much larger shift to consider relating to how homework is used and how it factors into grading. It was great to see members of the grading subcommittee volunteer to try different approaches in their classrooms. And I would also suggest reading the chapter 14 on grading homework from the book referenced above. So it's interesting to hear that. I know from my perspective, hearing JJ speak, I was quite impressed with all he's been doing, but I thought to myself, math is so different for me for ELA. Like, if the kids are reading we should be able, if we're checking on comprehension, we want to know what they're understanding from the text, whereas a math problem is this or that, black and white. So we have to think not only when we're thinking about homework, not thinking about the amount, the equity of it, kids understanding the intentionality of it, but also thinking about subject areas, thinking about grade level bands and the amount we're giving per grade level. So it's a huge undertaking, and I'm glad the work is going to continue. In our most recent meetings, we created 3 homework policy drafts, those 38 people, based on the information that we gathered. And finally, we determined our next steps, which we'll look at next year, which include establishing focus groups to follow up the surveys, looking at them a little deeper, and understanding why there's such a difference in the respondents and what the respondents think about homework. Developing communication amongst all stakeholders, creating professional development opportunities for teachers to better understand the whys and hows of homework delivery and assigning that, and seeking feedback on our 3 drafts, and making recommendations for homework guidelines by grade level band, as I mentioned before. So does anyone have any questions about the work that we've been doing?
I love all this work. I think it's good to be examining this stuff. And I just have a question on that interesting data point. You don't have to go back on the slides, but the 3/4 of students feel homework is manageable and useful, which I'm sus with a high schooler. So
Right.
personal experience. But also comparing that to the 3/4 of parents feel their child is stressed, overwhelmed. And I think we all see that, especially those of us with high school and middle school kids. And I know you said you have to delve deeper into that, and I look forward to that. But there's something, it feels like there's something interesting there, right?
Yes, and we looked at, one of the things that we want to look at when we continue on with this work is looking at the wording of the questioning, how kids, parents, and teachers are interpreting the questions. So we did spend a great deal of time putting the surveys together.
Useful doesn't necessarily negate stressful.
Right. Yes. And it's interesting because we also had discrepancies in the amount of time kids were spending on homework. Some kids were saying that they had only 30 minutes of homework, but parents were saying, well, they're working on it for 2 hours. Well, maybe we're not taking into account that the kid might be stopping to do something else.
Never happens.
Or getting on their phone or getting a snack, or those types of things. So those are all things that we want to investigate, as we continue our work next year.
Just because I'm a book nerd, can you say the title of the book again?
Certainly.
That chapter
Actually, I can
14
give you a
is from?
copy of this. I'll give you a copy.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions from anyone?
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
So much, Mark. Thank you. I feel like a very proud mom right now of we built something and it happened and it was beautiful. Thanks. But we're up next, Lisa. But although the work happened in buckets, right? So the 3 different committees, there was one opportunity that they came together as a group in January, and Lisa led them through a tuning protocol. I'm not going to go through all of this right now, but really it's about giving productive feedback. And just a couple quotes that you can read through on your own, but the members of the team found so much value in listening to the work that was done by others. And you even heard these 3 talk about the crossover naturally that happens, right? So that was really, really powerful. And we have another async coming up where they'll do one more round of this. It's just a busy time of year to get everybody out of the building again, but we're going to do that asynchronously, so we're excited about that. We have about 10 minutes left, and there's more quotes. So again, next steps for those 3 buckets, we're going to do cohort 2 for the grading and continue cohort 1. We're going to continue to work with our standards and unpacking standards through PLCs and grade level meetings. And then our homework team, Mark just shared with you what the plan is for them. All right, so now we're going to shift again just a little bit, and Lisa and I are going to share a little bit about some of our MTSS work, the first 2 columns. We're not going to get through everything, and I know Brett said to me, don't rush, we can always come back. So we are going to spend just a tiny bit of time talking about data. Does that sound good to everyone?
Yeah, I was going to suggest it. I figured because this is probably something people don't want to wait till June, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll do as much as we can tonight. So what we have in front of you right now is our spring achievement measures in math for the NWEA. Our students K-8 all take 3 times a year the NWEA as their universal screener for math. And so what you see here are the grade level bands all the way from K to 8. And the first number that you see is the median, so the average of students, and then where the percentages where students fell in the ranges there. So 9%, 7%, as you can see. Now, anything orange and above is on track to being grade level. And so orange looks like a little bit of a scary. Red is the number that we really intervene with, but anything orange and above is a good place for us to be. So we're doing relatively well, I would say, in that little percentage that you see of 9%, 13%, 11%, that's the top of your tier 3 triangle, okay? So that's spring. Oh, that's winter. I don't know why winter's there. I probably reordered. Oh, they didn't finish it yet. They weren't finished.
We're in the middle of the screening window right
So
now.
I can do
so-
updates of data in a board report if requested, but we're in the middle of a screening window. So just the elementary kids had finished their spring data. So we can do a comparison as well.
Yeah.
And then you'll see for reading, so K1, here's our K1 kids from fall to winter. Again, we're finishing spring data right now, so we'll have a third triangle that I could put in a board report. But you can see, look what's happening. The red triangle's shrinking. It's working, right? And so you see that in every grade level. Some are a little bit more exciting than others, but we're doing a really good job. It's a combination of tier 1 instruction and tier 3 intervention, and that is the magic sauce that gets kids to be performing on grade level. We're very, very excited about that.
Hey, Tanya, what do you see as far as if you're following cohorts? Like do you compare the spring data from, this year's second graders to their data in the fall as third graders to see?
Yeah, we can follow
how it's
kids both
maintaining?
ways, up and across. So we definitely want to know in a year if our interventions are working, but kids that are in that top tier, we also follow them for years until they're out of that intervention.
And like in general, like how are we looking every year fall for third graders?
So what
Like, are we
could-
getting
could do,
better?
I
Yeah,
think
we can
that's
do
great
that for
using
sure.
that longitudinal data
Yeah.
to see how cohorts are doing. Remember, we're fairly new in this game
Right.
too.
Yeah.
So as we go on, like that data is going to continue. So you can see that third grader all the way up until hopefully 7th grade and 8th grade. So I think that's a great report to put into the
Yeah,
mix.
and
Yeah,
we've
and if in
we've
general,
changed our universal screener specifically. We used to do NWEA K5 for reading, but we've changed to Ames Web. So we don't have longitudinal data there because we changed the measure, but we do have it in other places. So absolutely, if that's an ask, we can do that.
It'd be interesting to see if our strong K2 game means that like over the years we're starting at a better spot in third grade and fourth grade.
And
Third grade this year versus third grade in 3
Yeah,
years.
yes, yeah,
Well, that too.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many ways to analyze data.
So
Okay,
many
thank you.
ways, and all of it makes me very happy. Additionally, we're going to start to see those results out of our state testing. And then as we continue to build our common formative assessments, all those pieces, right? There's lots of places for us to
So
see the impact of our
piece-
work.
The piece that I'm interested on, the cohort piece, is what are we doing about it? Like, what are happening? I think that's part of this year, but I think how the team is processing through our problem-solving process, through our EWE teams and our conference days, how are we growing with it?
Yeah, absolutely. All of those things are happening. They're going to be happening in even more of a standardized, formatted way, especially through our PLC model. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm really excited about a couple pieces of data and really, really proud of our team. So we have a large intervention team, and again, thank you for the board for supporting that. We have 15 reading specialists, 9 math specialists that work across 4 buildings. That's K5. And then we also have middle school interventionists and high school interventionists. We also have, right now we have 2 full-time TOSAs. Next year we'll have 3 full-time TOSAs that can do both math and reading intervention across the district. So we'll really be able to serve as many kids as possible. Here's just by the numbers. We're servicing 357 kids in 72 groups. K8
Every day, those.
for reading, 5 days a week. It depends if you're in kindergarten and first grade, you get that for 20 minutes a day. If you're 2nd through 8th grade, it's 40 minutes a day. Every day, 5 days a week, we do math intervention for 161 students. Again, if you're K1, that's 20 minutes, and you can piggyback those. We piggyback those together, so K1 kids can get math and reading. And then if you're a 2-8 student, you would get, well, 2-5 I'll speak of specifically. 2-5, you get 40 minutes of math intervention, and then 6-8, it's in your schedule if you need math intervention. So those numbers look a little bit different. But the thing that I'm really, really excited about, not only are we servicing a bunch of kids, which is amazing. We're moving kids, as you saw, through the triangles, the way we're supposed to be moving students, right? We're getting kids reading on grade level or as close to grade level and doing math on grade level and as close to grade level as possible. But this is a really interesting data point. Because of the way our master schedule is, we have an intervention block. Our intervention block is 40 minutes. And as I said, in K1, we split that 20 minutes reading, 20 minutes math. It's research-based. Kids can't attend for much longer than that, right? And so you can really get them fast and hit them hard and move them on to the next intervention. So all of our K1 students that need math and reading are getting math and reading in an intervention block with an intervention teacher. Amazing. That's great. But we have to make a hard choice when they get to second grade. And at second grade, second to fifth grade, our intervention block is 40 minutes, but the reading intervention that we need to do is 40 minutes long. So it takes the entire intervention block. So what that means is we have some kids that don't get intervention in a traditional way. And so our team, and when I say our team, I really mean building teams, have gotten really creative on how can we still service those. We have about 90 students between second and fifth grade that aren't getting tier 3 intervention, but obviously we're not going to let 90 kids just hang out there without getting the support they need. So our teams got really creative and came up with a lot of ways to intervene for these kids. So some of those are like lunch bunch groups where we pull them and they might get intervention 3 days a week. Some of those are instead of like they don't have anything during activity period, so we pull them and they do something there. But JA, and I want to give a shout out to Erica Santoro. Santoro? Oh, all these O's and A's, I don't know in this town. Erica said, you know what, we've got an amazing program called IXL. And I know IXL, if used right, can impact kids. And so she set up a system at JA where the group of students being serviced at JA in tier 2 intervention, they get IXL intervention 10 minutes a day. It's overseen by Erica. She makes sure the kids are in the right spots. There's some like assignments that you have to do to make sure kids aren't just willy-nilly like trying to do exponents when they're in second grade. Those kids are growing at a crazy rate. So let me just explain these rates to you. So in NWEA, they show your percentile growth over time. And so what that means is they're showing a student's performance compared to their peers. And so you want kids to be growing at 50% or higher because that means they're doing better than their peers, especially when they're behind, right? The higher you're over 50, the better they're doing over time. The kids at JA doing the IXL intervention are growing at, is it 84% on average? That is just insane when we have other students on average that are getting intervention, tier 3 intervention, that are growing at 55%. So we are so excited about what's happening at JA. We're really looking to replicate that across our other buildings next year. It's really a great use of resources, a great use of an investment that we already had, and it's moving kids. So it's very exciting. So
I think just for the sake of time.
Yeah, we're going to stop here.
Simply because there's powerful statements there. You have the board ask a couple questions.
Yep,
and
we're ready.
if the board chooses, we could bring you back to talk about the next steps, which I think are important too. It's in the presentation. So I just want to, does the board have any reflections or thoughts back on what you heard so far?
I thought one awesome thing we learned at JA at our visit last week is that the students who are also qualifying for both interventions are being invited to summer school, and that I really appreciate that investment and time on behalf of the district.
Yeah, Lisa and a team have been really planning summer programs, so we're very excited about that. And that summer program has evolved to the point where it's you come for what you need. Yep.
Can kids access the IXL at home? Like, if you had a parent that was really dedicated to keep pushing that growth, could they access it? Well, I can't do math at home. That would just lead to a lot of arguments that we don't need to have over the summer.
I feel like there are certain teachers that will.
Could they? Yeah.
So every year, our TOSA team puts together like here's things that you can do at home over the summer, and IXL is one of the things on that list. Lexia is also one of the things on that list. Lexia is the IXL equivalent, if you will, for reading, which is also having fantastic results. So the plan is to have that available for families to utilize over the summer as we have in the past. I will say that our tech department is transitioning away from ClassLink, which impacts how kids log in. So we need to resolve the piece with ClassLink. So as soon as that is resolved, then families, yes, will have access.
I think there's 5 weeks
During
of
the
school
summer.
left. We got this.
We got
We'll
it.
figure out.
We got it. We're gonna crush it.
The only thing, if for parents watching at home, I would, and parents on the ties, I would say that when your students doing IXL, just take a peek on what they're doing, because you can jump around and that's not going to have any value.
But the data's there.
If doing it the way it's prescribed, absolutely. Yeah.
I just really appreciate your work on that, because that's definitely a concern, the tier 3
Absolutely.
overlap. So
Yeah.
it sounds like there's some great solutions happening.
Yeah,
so
we're
thank
really
you.
working on that. And we keep trying to find more minutes in the master schedule, see if we can figure it out, because we do know that personal face-to-face interaction matters. And if we can't do it, we can find other ways to serve our kids.
At our tour at Northside, I thought they said they were doing something with IXL as well. So is that already starting
Yep.
then?
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, in February, the two Ericas met. Northside's lead teacher was also Erica. And anyway, they met and they turnkeyied it. So Northside got the training, I want to say like around February time. So they're not as far along in it as JA is, but that's a big chunk. So we just have one more building left to
Well,
move into
Dudley's
it.
second grade too.
Oh, that's right, Dudley's.
But Brooks Hill.
Yeah. Mhm.
Brooks Hill and then
Brooks Hill.
Dudley second graders, because this really only impacts 2nd through 5th graders at this point. We also are bringing IXL into our math intervention tier 3 next year as well. So kids that are in tier 3 intervention for math will also have that targeted IXL time, because we do know the impact. So.
Yeah, and they've got a 40-minute time block. They only really need 30 minutes to do that direct instruction piece. So there's a perfect little window of 10 minutes to plug in the IXL. It's also going to replace our progress monitoring that we currently use. We use AimsWeb K through 5 for reading and math to do the progress monitoring. Our math people love AimsWeb for K and 1. Once they hit 2nd grade, they're not loving it so much. So it's 2 birds, 1 stone. Replace that progress monitoring, get a high intensity intervention in there.
I look forward to developing the data suite, and I think building in the cohort pieces, I'm excited about.
Yeah.
I know that Lisa brought it up, and I think the board would benefit from that, from how are we doing lens, and that spring data is going to be great to see too.
It absolutely will. Well, thank you so much for having our team tonight.
Really proud of the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you. So are we. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the fields and the championships and the capital projects. This is the most important work we do. So thank you for leading it. Thank you, both of you.
Okay, so now I need a motion to enter into executive session for matters that are listed in the agenda above.
So moved.
Second. Such a professional. All right.
Barry, Caitlin, Brian, all in favor? Aye. 7-0. If you are listening at home, we will be going into a different room for executive session, and we will be reconvening, then adjourning, and then heading back over here for our business meeting at 7.
Yeah, but I don't